If you're a skywatcher, you've likely dreamed of seeing something truly unprecedented, a celestial event that defies easy explanation. If you're a skeptic, you demand hard evidence before belief, meticulously separating fact from digital fiction. And if you're simply watching the world, you might be worried about what happens when the unbelievable suddenly appears in our skies, and official channels fall silent. On the nights of February 1st and 2nd, 2026, all three perspectives collided over the frozen cities of Russia. What began as a few scattered social media posts from St. Petersburg quickly erupted into a global phenomenon, a digital wildfire fueled by awe, confusion, and suspicion. The clips were stunning and eerily similar, streams of citizens, bundled against sub-zero temperatures, standing transfixed on icy streets. Their phones, held aloft by gloved hands, were all pointed at the same spectacle. High above the historic architecture and sleeping city blocks, the moon was flanked by three brilliant imposters, creating the illusion of four moons hanging in the night sky. The videos exploded online, accumulating millions of views in mere hours. The question on everyone's lips was simple and profound: what are we looking at? Eyewitness accounts flooded comment sections, each adding a layer of human experience to the digital evidence. One user wrote, "It was silent, no sound, just these perfect lights hanging there. It felt wrong, but beautiful." Another posted, "My dog started whining minutes before I saw it. The air felt electric. Search engines buckled under the strain. Queries for Four Moons Russia and Paraselene Kremlin skyrocketed." The phenomenon wasn't isolated. As the Earth turned, reports flooded in from Moscow, then from remote towns across the vast expanse of Siberia. Scattered maps, compiled by amateur astronomers and news outlets, began to show the same bizarre halo patterns appearing over a massive geographical area, all within a 48-hour window. The sheer scale was staggering, stretching across thousands of kilometers and multiple time zones. The official explanation came swiftly, almost too swiftly for some. Experts offered a familiar, if obscure term: paraselene. Also known as moondogs, a paraselene is a natural optical event, a celestial sibling to the more common sundog. It occurs when moonlight shines through a thin veil of high-altitude cirrus clouds. These clouds are filled with millions of tiny, plate-shaped hexagonal ice crystals. For a paraselene to form, these crystals must be oriented horizontally as they drift through the frigid air, acting like a swarm of microscopic prisms. You can even approximate this effect at home. Shining a bright light through a medium containing suspended, reflective particles can create a similar, albeit much simpler, halo. As moonlight passes through the atmospheric crystals, the light is bent, or refracted, at a precise angle of 22 degrees. This refraction creates luminous spots on either side of the moon, along a ring called the 22-degree halo. When conditions are perfect, a third spot can appear above the moon, creating the stunning illusion of multiple moons. It is, scientists assured the public, an extreme but entirely natural spectacle. A beautiful but explainable quirk of physics. But for many online sleuths and eyewitnesses, the explanation didn't quite fit the evidence. The images flooding the internet often showed four distinct, sharply defined orbs, not the diffuse, rainbow-tinged spots typical of a classic paraselene. The geometry seemed too perfect, too symmetrical. This is where the line between atmospheric optics and digital artifacts begins to blur. Modern smartphone cameras, with their complex multi-lens systems and aggressive HDR processing, can introduce anomalies. A phenomenon called lens flare can create secondary, ghost images when pointed at a very bright light source like the full moon. You can see this yourself by pointing your phone at a bright streetlight. Furthermore, sensor bloom can cause the light to oversaturate and spill, making a light source appear larger and more orb-like than it is. Was this a case of a natural event being exaggerated by the very technology used to capture it? A perfect storm of rare atmospheric conditions and the quirks of consumer electronics? It's a plausible theory, but it doesn't satisfy everyone. The consistency of the four-orb pattern across thousands of different devices remains a sticking point for skeptics of this digital artifact theory. While some debated camera settings, others looked for a more deliberate cause. The official silence from the Kremlin and Russian space agencies, Roscosmos, created a vacuum that was quickly filled with speculation. Anonymous insiders speaking to independent journalists hinted at hush-hush atmospheric technology. Leaked chatter from encrypted channels, though unverified, tied the timing of the event to a series of classified military satellite tests. Theories emerged about ionospheric heating experiments, powerful ground-based antennas beaming energy into the upper atmosphere, potentially creating a plasma glow under specific conditions. Could a military test have inadvertently created this massive light show? Or more chillingly, was this an intentional display of a new strategic capability, a message sent not with missiles, but with light itself? The narrative grew more complex as users began connecting the dots, or perhaps drawing new lines between unrelated events. Reports of strange green fireballs in the days leading up to the paraselene were unearthed. Eyewitnesses in several affected cities claimed to have experienced brief, unexplained power fluctuations and grid strain during the peak of the display. Online forums became a battleground, mixing sober astronomical analysis with wilder claims. Some insisted it was a large-scale government projection, a Project Bluebeam-style operation designed to distract the public from political or economic turmoil. This theory, a long-standing favorite in conspiracy circles, suggests that governments can use holographic technology to stage events. While there is no public evidence such technology exists on this scale, the sheer strangeness of the Russian moons gave the idea new life. Others whispered it was a prelude to classified military operations, a psychological tool to gauge public reaction to unusual phenomena. The story quickly went global. Western analysts voiced concern, not necessarily about the phenomenon itself, but about the information vacuum surrounding it. In an age of hybrid warfare, where perception can be as powerful as reality, even a natural event could be leveraged for strategic purposes. Was this a test of Russia's ability to control a narrative on a national scale? International news cycles picked up the story, framing it as another enigma from an increasingly unpredictable Russia. Yet major space agencies like NASA and the ESA remained conspicuously tight-lipped. They issued only brief statements deferring to the standard paraselene explanation and pointedly refused to comment on the more speculative theories. This official silence from the global scientific community, intended perhaps to avoid dignifying conspiracy, only added fuel to the fire. To many, it felt less like a dismissal and more like a coordinated refusal to engage. So what are we left with? A swirl of breathtaking contradictory footage, redacted headlines and non-committal expert statements, and more questions than answers. Why now? Why was this display, if natural, so uniquely widespread and intense, far exceeding documented historical precedents for paraselene? Why did it appear almost exclusively over major Russian population centers and strategic regions? And most critically, why the deafening silence from official channels, both within Russia and abroad? Every possible explanation seems to leave a piece of the puzzle unaccounted for. The data is there, but the story it tells depends entirely on who is telling it and what they choose to believe. Whether it was a rare and beautiful natural event, amplified by our modern technology and anxieties, a piece of advanced, secret technology being tested in plain sight, or something stranger still, one fact is undeniable. For 2 nights, millions of people watched the sky change and the world took notice. The event became a global Rorschach test. For scientists, it was a case study in atmospheric optics. For governments, a lesson in information control. For the public, a stark reminder of the unknown. When an entire nation sees something impossible in the sky, it forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. It raises a fundamental question. In a world saturated with information and misinformation, how do we know what is real? And if this was a test, a deliberate act disguised as a natural wonder, what hidden reality is Russia preparing its people or the world for?